All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into something I think we all deal with, and it's not always fun.
Oh, yeah.
Our inner critic.
Yeah.
You know that voice in your head that's always like, you're not good enough. You could be doing better.
Absolutely.
Like, why did you eat that?
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at an article today by Stephen Pinkwart.
Okay.
And the article is called Why Your Inner Critic is Worse Than a Clogged Toilet.
Well, that's an image.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So he starts off the article by talking about just like his morning routine and how like even from the minute he wakes up, that inner critic is already there.
Yeah.
Like, telling him like, oh, you look terrible today. Why didn't you go to bed earlier?
Yeah.
Judging the state of his apartment.
Oh, yeah. I feel that.
And he actually uses this really funny description.
Oh, yeah.
He calls his reflection like, quote unquote, a horror movie.
Wow.
And his alarm clock is like a dying robot duck.
So he's like really painting this picture of like,
you
know, even just starting the day can be a struggle with that inner critic.
Absolutely. And it's funny because he then goes on to compare this inner critic to like a sugar-crazed toddler.
What?
Yeah.
Toddler?
Yeah. He's like, imagine you've got this toddler who just had like 10 bags of candy.
Oh, no.
And they're running around and they're like screaming and they're breaking things. And they're just generally ruining the good time.
Okay.
That's kind of what the inner critic is like.
So like always demanding attention, throwing tantrums, like fixated on the negative.
Exactly. Like if you've got, first date jitters or something.
Oh, God, yeah.
That's your inner critic, throwing a tantrum because you didn't pick the perfect outfit.
Right.
Or you're worried about like saying the wrong thing.
Yeah, or like that toddler.
What if I spill my drink?
Exactly.
Or like trip walking in.
All those things, yeah.
Yeah, God. And then what about like...
Or if you're giving a presentation at work and you're all nervous.
The pre-presentation panic.
Yeah, it's like that inner critic is like right there on stage with you.
Oh, my God.
Whispering all your insecurities into the microphone.
Ugh, it's so true.
It is.
So like, what do we do about this?
Right.
Like, how do we handle this little monster?
Well, I mean, he does say, we're not born with this inner critic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not like we come out of the womb with this like voice screaming at us.
At you.
It's something we learn. It's like a product of societal conditioning.
Oh, so like all those messages we get.
Exactly.
About how we should be.
About what we should be doing, how we should look, what success should look like.
It's like this giant checklist. Of like impossible standards.
Yeah, and that inner critic is constantly like they're reminding you how many boxes you haven't ticked.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Yeah, and he even compares it to like school. You know how in school you're always being told to like strive for perfect grades, be the best athlete.
Yeah.
Write the most insightful essays, and then we carry that pressure into adulthood.
Except now it's about like...
Except now it's like, okay, you need to have the perfect job.
Okay.
You need to have the perfect family, the perfect Instagram feed.
It never ends.
It never ends.
So are we basically just setting ourselves up for failure?
Kind of.
Great.
But Pinkwart says there's another way.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, he tells this story about a terrible karaoke singer.
Oh, boy.
Like the kind that makes you want to hide under the table.
Oh, I know the type.
Yeah.
The one with like the voice of a dying cat.
That's the one.
And the stage presence of a wet sock.
Exactly. But here's the thing.
Okay.
He sang his heart out.
Okay.
Completely unfazed by his lack of talent. And the audience loved him for it.
Really?
Yeah, they were cheering, they were clapping.
So what's the takeaway here?
Well, then what are we supposed to learn from this? Yeah. Are we supposed to just like embrace being terrible at things? Not exactly. Right. It's more about the fact that sometimes authenticity trumps perfection. Yeah. It's about having the courage to just be yourself.
Okay.
Even if it's messy, imperfect, or a little off-key.
A little off-key. I like that.
Yeah.
So it's not about silencing the inner critic.
Right.
It's more about like shifting our focus.
Exactly.
So instead of like striving for this unattainable perfection, we should embrace our individuality.
Yes.
And express ourselves authentically.
Precisely.
Even if it means making some mistakes.
Of course you're going to make mistakes.
Along the way.
That's part of the process.
Yeah, that's true. And he gets really specific.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, like he actually talks about how to do this. Especially if you're into creative pursuits, like poetry slams.
Interesting.
He talks about like using embarrassing moments as inspiration.
Okay.
Embracing creative swearing. And exploring unconventional topics.
So, like, what does that look like?
So he gives an example.
Okay.
Where he says, this tax return messed me up harder than my first heartbreak.
No, that's a line that's going to get a reaction from the audience.
So he's saying, like, don't be afraid to get a little dark, edgy.
A little unconventional.
Yeah, a little unconventional with your art.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's about
pushing boundaries.
Challenging expectations and finding humor in the unexpected.
Finding the humor.
Yeah.
That's key.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
But how does that disarm the inner critic?
Right, like how does embracing imperfection actually help?
Yeah.
Well, he suggests that by accepting our flaws and quirks, we kind of take away the power they have over us.
Oh.
It's like saying, yeah, I messed up.
Yeah.
So I'm still here and I'm still creating.
Okay.
And he even uses Shakespeare as an example. Yeah, he's like, you know, even Shakespeare didn't conform to modern day standards of success.
Can you imagine?
Like, imagine Shakespeare stressing over his Instagram follower count.
I know, right?
It's ridiculous.
That's a funny thought.
It is.
So much of our self-doubt is driven by these, like...
these external pressures. And societal expectations.
Yeah.
That have nothing to do with, like, our inherent worth or our creative potential.
So instead of trying to fit into this predefined mold of what success or creativity should look like, he's encouraging us to embrace our own unique path.
Precisely.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So we've established that perfection is a myth.
It is.
And embracing imperfection is key.
Absolutely.
But how do we actually put this into practice?
Right.
How do we quiet that voice and start expressing ourselves authentically?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. He talks about developing almost like a rebellious attitude towards those internal critics. He calls it embracing the asshole mentality.
The asshole mentality.
Yeah.
Okay, now before everyone starts picturing like yelling at baristas and cutting lines.
Exactly. He's not talking about being a jerk to other people.
Gotcha.
It's more about being a little rebellious towards that inner critic, like having the guts to say, you know what? I'm going to do this my way.
Okay.
Even if it's not perfect. Even if it makes some people uncomfortable.
So it's like channeling your inner rock star.
Yes.
But for poetry.
Exactly.
Leather jackets, optional.
Of course.
So it's about having the confidence to own your style, your voice, and not let those self-doubts hold you back.
Like, remember that karaoke singer?
Oh, yeah.
He didn't let a lack of talent stop him from belting it out.
I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Oh, yeah.
Pinkwork seems to be all about turning these traditional notions of success and talent on their head.
He's challenging the idea that we have to fit into some predefined mold.
Right.
He argues that, like, our flaws, our quirks, the things that make us different, those are actually our greatest assets.
Okay. I can see how that applies to creative pursuits like poetry.
Yeah.
But does this asshole mentality work in other areas of life?
What do you mean?
Like, should I be using it to negotiate a raise?
Wow.
Or argue with my internet provider?
Maybe not in those exact situations, but the core principle applies. It's about having the confidence to stand up for yourself and what you believe in.
Okay.
Even if it means going against the grain or challenging the status quo.
So it's about knowing your worth.
Yes.
And not being afraid to assert yourself.
Exactly.
I like that.
It's about recognizing that your voice and your perspective, they matter. Even if they're not always polished or perfectly aligned with what everyone else is doing or saying.
So owning your truth.
Yes.
Even if it's a little rough around the edges.
Exactly. And that's where the humor comes in.
Oh, yeah.
Pinkwart uses humor throughout the article to kind of disarm the inner critic and make this whole topic of self-acceptance less daunting.
Less heavy.
He's basically saying, hey, let's laugh at ourselves, at our flaws, at the absurdity of it all.
Because if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at?
Exactly. And it's not just about laughing at ourselves. He actually gives us tools to do this.
Okay.
Like his poetry slam tips encourage us to embrace the embarrassing, the unconventional, the things that make us unique.
So that time I tripped and face planted into a birthday cake. Potentially.
Yeah.
poetry gold right there.
The point is to find the humor in the unexpected, to use those experiences that we might normally try to hide as fuel for our creativity.
So turning those cringe moments into something powerful and relatable.
Exactly. And by doing so, we're not only disarming our inner critics, but we're also creating art that is authentic, vulnerable, and ultimately more meaningful.
Okay, I'm sold, but let's be realistic. Not everyone's going to be running off to poetry slams anytime soon. So how can we apply these principles to our everyday lives? You know, for those of us who aren't necessarily aspiring wordsmiths.
That's a great question. I think one of the key takeaways is the importance of self-compassion. Pinkwort reminds us that we're all works in progress, that it's okay to make mistakes, to be imperfect, to not have it all figured out.
So basically give ourselves a break.
Exactly. And part of that is recognizing that those negative thoughts, those critical voices in our head, they're just, they're thoughts. They don't define us. And we don't have to let them control us.
So choosing to focus on our strengths. And our potential. Rather than dwelling on our perceived weaknesses.
And I think this ties in nicely with his emphasis on the power of sharing our stories. He argues that by being vulnerable and authentic, we create a space for connection and understanding.
It's like saying, hey, I'm messy. I'm imperfect. I'm still figuring things out. But I'm here. And I have something to say.
And that's incredibly powerful, not only for ourselves, but for those around us. It allows others to see themselves in our stories and to feel less alone in their own struggles.
So it's not just about being creative for ourselves, but it's about using our creativity. To connect with others and build a sense of community.
Absolutely. And I think that's where his message really resonates. It's about embracing our individuality, our flaws, our unique experiences, and using them to create something beautiful and meaningful. Both for ourselves and for the world around us.
That's all well and good. But let's be honest. Sometimes that inner critic can be pretty damn persistent.
It can.
What do we do when it just won't shut up? Even after we've tried all the self-compassion and humor in the world.
Well, Pinkwort does offer one more tool for dealing with those, particularly stubborn inner critics. He talks about finding your poetry master.
Poetry master?
What is that?
Well, it's not some mystical guru on a mountaintop. It's actually about finding your voice, your style, your way of expressing yourself authentically. And he believes his book, Poetry Master, can be a guide on that journey.
So it's not just like a how-to guide for writing poetry. It's more like...
It's like
a pep talk.
A pep talk for your soul. Like equipping yourself with the tools and the mindset. You need to silence those self-doubting voices. And unleash your creative potential.
And he calls it a sword. To battle that inner critic.
It is a weapon.
I like that. But most of us aren't trying to become world-famous poets. So how can this idea of a poetry master apply to like someone who just wants to feel more confident sharing their ideas at work or expressing themselves in their personal relationships?
I think it boils down to finding what works for you. What helps you tap into that authentic voice and express it with confidence. It might be journaling, it might be painting, playing music, or even just having honest conversations with people you trust.
So it's less about the specific form of expression. And more but the underlying principle. Of finding what helps you feel empowered and authentic.
Exactly.
I like that.
And that's where Pinkwort's message, I think, really shines. He's not just giving us tips for writing poetry. He's giving us a framework for living a more creative, authentic, and fulfilling life.
He's basically saying, screw the rules. Find what works for you. And don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
And do it with a sense of humor. Because let's face it, life is too short.
To take
ourselves too seriously.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the wonderfully messy world of inner critics and creative expression, what's the one piece of advice you'd give our listeners who are ready to embrace their asshole mentality and unleash their inner poet, even if it's just in their own living rooms?
I would say start small.
Okay.
Take one tiny step today to express yourself authentically.
Okay.
Write that silly poem.
Okay.
Sing that off-key song.
Yeah.
Share that idea that's been brewing in your mind. Don't worry about perfection.
Okay.
Just focus on the joy of creating and connecting with your true self.
Love it.
And hey, if you need a little guidance on that journey, Poetry Master, Posy Craft, and 7 Taggin. Ooh. Might just be the sword you need.
I love that. Start small.
Yes.
Embrace the imperfections and have fun along the way. And hey, if you need a good laugh at the expense of your inner critic, Pinkwart's article is definitely worth a read.
It's a hilarious and insightful reminder that we don't have to let those negative voices control us.
Right.
We have the power to choose.
Yeah.
Self-acceptance over self-criticism, authenticity over perfection, and joy over fear.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
So to all you deep divers out there, keep exploring. Keep creating.
Yes.
And keep embracing those beautifully imperfect selves.
Love that.
And Stefan, if you're listening, be creative. Until next time.